Coach Foley, you're entering your 19th year. The first 18, you've taken the Sharks to the playoffs every year. Obviously, you have some keys to your success. What exactly do you need from this team to make that happen for a 19th run?
We need a lot of the younger players to step up and begin to mature a little bit on the court and take some ownership in regards to how the team progresses. Our second-year players are beginning to play like second-year players, but it has to be a quick maturation for so many. We have 7 freshmen to really fill in the gaps where only the 3 sophomores are returning, as opposed last year we had 7 returnees.
That's pretty impressive, actually, for your track record, since you only have these kids for 2 years, really, to have that type of run.
Yeah, well, we've been real fortunate to get a lot of kids who want to play and want to listen and work pretty hard to achieve things. And as I said to this team here, we've had teams with less talent, but they have hit their own ceiling. And as you said, we've been fortunate enough to make playoffs 18 years in a row. And I expect us to. I always tell them this. Let's get to be the first 4 teams so we have a home game for the first playoff round and get me and the coaches to championship weekend, and then we'll figure out what we need to be doing.
Good for you.
Yeah.
You're playing Kingsborough Community College tonight. Tell us a little bit about the matchup.
The matchup is Kingsborough has a really good point guard who's been averaging 14, 15 points a game. We're going to have to stop her. They have some size inside. Hopefully our big girl, we only have 1 big girl right now. We're getting another one back for eligibility purposes on Thursday to not get into foul trouble and to, like every game I put on the board, rebounding, defense, and turnovers are the key.
Well, good luck tonight, Coach.
Okay. Hey,
We're big fans.
Pleasure. Thanks a lot.
You bet. Welcome to Faculty Spotlight. I'm Jennifer Truscott, and I have the pleasure of sitting here with the 1995 Sports Hall of Fame inductee, Kevin Foley. Coach, great to see you again.
Jen, great to see you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I tell you, you have quite a career. 37 years of teaching in Health and Human Services as a professor here at Suffolk. 22 years of coaching, 18 straight, I guess, up to this point in time. A lot to balance. Do you define yourself as a coach or a professor?
I always like to say it's 1A and 1B. I think as I look back, the thing I'm most proud of is being in the classroom for 33 years and dealing with over 300 students a year, and just having an opportunity to be with them for 15 weeks to share some not only knowledge but share some experiences that help them move on in their life.
Last time we met, you were preparing for the Kingsborough Community College basketball game. And if I recall, I think you won definitively in that game.
Yes, we did.
So it was early on in the season. You said you had a challenging season ahead of you. Yes. Bring us up to speed on how the team stands today.
It turned into a little more challenging than we thought. We lost our point guard about five games into the season. We lost a big girl who didn't return from vacation to Florida. So we had to switch a lot of young ladies around into positions that they weren't comfortable with. And then rely on, I think the conversation we had, you asked me what needs to happen, and I said that the young kids need to step up. And like a lot of young freshmen at any level, it's always a up and down cycle. So one day they'll be fine, the next game looked like they never played, so it's a continuation. However, we came in 4th place.
Congratulations.
And we did fairly well. It's an expectation that we like to get into the top 2 or 3, but we just missed coming in 3rd by 2 games. So overall, we're happy. Day to day, it's been a struggle to get us to the level that we thought we would be at.
So tell me a little bit about coaching at a community college. You talked about the younger ones have to step up. That's the younger meaning 1 of 2 years, correct?
The first year women who just come right out of high school. We don't have the pleasure of having juniors and seniors. And actually, it's a big jump even for some sophomores who come from the first year to the second year. And so that's the hardest thing, that you're always going back to fundamentals each year and always have to prove yourself and prove how you want them to play after they've been with a coach for 4 years, no matter if they're, a couple of our girls were 3 and 15, one young lady was 0 and 18, and then another young lady won the Suffolk County Championship. So to get them to begin to understand what the transition's about, and I always talk about that no matter where you are, and you know this from your playing days, going from high school to college, there's always a transition.
Oh, absolutely.
Even at a junior college level, at a D3 junior college level. And it took about half the season for them to get that.
That's a tough challenge, though, I think, to have only the 2 years that you've got with the students. But if you take a look at your track record, 18 years straight, playoffs, what do you attribute that success to? Getting young women who buy into our system, the way we do things. And some years are easier than others. But I've been fortunate enough to have been able to, and it goes back to teaching. I always would like to say is that you try to make an environment where people want to learn when I was in the classroom. And what I attempt to do is make the gym or practice something that they enjoy most of the time. They don't enjoy running so much, but to enjoy and attempt them to. I had a great teacher who says what you do is you take them from A to B and C to F, and step by step. You can't go too fast. And so it's been a struggle. One of the hardest struggles the last year or two is a lot of kids are coming in with less fundamentals and being less prepared. So that's something that you have seen changed over the years? Tremendous. The fundamentals coming up from high school are not as strong. Right. I think you go universally, whether it be men or women, even though there's a lot of AAU games and different things, there's less instruction going on. And as you know, to be real good at something and or to excel, which is a strange word for a lot of them, is that you truly have to be fundamentally sound. Mm-hmm. As I like to say, probably one of the most fundamentally sound people I ever saw was Michael Jordan, Magic, and Larry. They were fundamentally impeccable. So how do you teach those fundamentals? Well, we have an opportunity to, as one young lady said, have some very long practices. And that I think if you ask them, I'm a bit of a stickler, that if I asked you to go to point X, you go to point X, you don't go to point X 2 steps over. And as I like to say, what wins big games are fundamentals and execution. And if you pay attention in practice, you're more than likely you're going to execute in a game, which you're familiar with. How do you keep up that energy, though, in practice to mirror that of a game so the folks are focused and your team is really ready and prepared? Well, year to year, that gets to be more difficult in terms of who comes in. We don't have a lot to offer young ladies. We're not giving them a scholarship. We can offer them a quality education at Suffolk, but that doesn't always sell people to come to Suffolk. So some years, like the years we won, we were 46-2 over 2 years, and we were national champs in 2003. We had 10 to 12 young ladies that came into practice and went after it. And it was kind of easy. They were competitive. They were wanted to have a starting position. Some years there's such a disparagement between the first 2 or 3 girls and the rest of the team. So there's not that everyday constant battle like I want your spot, and you know that you understand. Mm-hmm. So that's the hardest part in terms of being competitive and learning to be competitive in drills. And that's been a little bit of a struggle for us this year. What drew you to women's basketball as opposed to men's? Serendipity. And I found a home and I didn't leave, even though I've had 5 opportunities to leave, to coach men. I was on my way up to Boston to visit some people and then probably move back to North Carolina or Northern California. And a gentleman, as I was mentioning to you before, who knew me from high school out on Long Island, said, come see me. So I went and saw him. He was an athletic director at a local high school. And he said to me, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to go look for a job. He says, you have a job right here. I go, what do you mean? He says, I can get you a part-time teaching job. And this is back in 1974, the girls' basketball team. And I said, and he looked at me, and he was an old Irish guy. He looked at me with a little stern face that I remember from my father on periodic times. And he says, you owe something to the game.
And once I started coaching, I loved it. It was a passion that I've had since I was a kid, and you don't get it too many other places, especially if you played at the level that you have, that
Sure.
when you walk into a gym and you learn to go after something and work for something for 2 or 3, 4 months, and you can achieve something, it makes not only you feel good, but that you've accomplished something in your life. You've moved beyond where you were.
So let me jump on something you just said. You said you owed something to the game.
Right.
If we go back in time, my understanding is, not only are you a longtime resident of Long Island, you personally held the Suffolk and Long Island scoring record for many years. You had a scholarship to play at Seton Hall, where you averaged 14.5 points per game. You were named captain of the team in your senior year. Is that what you owe back to the game, your success?
It's not about necessarily points or opportunities, but it's something that people along the way who made a difference in your life, who and coaches, I believe, have that opportunity a little bit more than a lot of people do, because they're around them. And when you're in intense situations, you find out more about yourself. And sometimes you fail, sometimes you succeed, but people are there to pick you up and teach you lessons, hands-on lessons, not just a book lesson. And I've had a lot of opportunities. My high school coach was Frank Layden, who went on to coach at Niagara in the Utah Jazz. And he had a tremendous impact upon me and the young men that I played basketball with. But he was just somebody that, at the time of being in high school, we were impressionable, and he taught us certain lessons. And I think there's no more impressionable time. I've always loved teaching in college and being in college than young women or young men at college age, because their heads are a little bit more open. They're attempting to find out what life's about a little bit more. And it's been a wonderful, as I said, 22-year experience doing that.
We also have some egos at that age too, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right on when you talk about those impressionable moments. Having played in high school and college myself, if I look back, those that were most influential on me were the coaches throughout the years, as well as my teammates.
Yeah.
Tell me,
if I could just jump in, I
sure,
think
no,
you hit on a great point, is that I think sports is a great opportunity. Not that I gave a talk once at a 4-year school about the importance of athletics, and I said some people learn the lessons in athletics and some people don't. It's not one of those things like sports makes a universal difference. I said, but it can teach people. I said one of the great things about sports is, I said, it teaches you about adversity and how to handle adversity. And if you're real successful, it also teaches you how to handle success. And the thing is that you can learn how to be more successful, but then you also learn that life is not always successful and wins. You have to learn to pick yourself up. You have to learn to come back the next day, and you have to learn not to be critical of yourself and others. And really and I'm prejudiced. I think basketball is the best game in the world, but it teaches you about what a team is, and teaches you about how to relate to each other when you have that camaraderie and that sportsmanship that I think athletics allows you to have.
No, if I take a look back at my career, growing up through sports, and now, as I sit as an executive at a healthcare company leading a team of about 700 associates, the lessons that I use every day came from my experience on the court. Tell me a little bit about that transition, though, you had to make from being a player to a coach.
The hardest part, I think it's the same in the classroom or being an executive, you may get things, or I may get things pretty easy, and then you have to understand that other people get things in different ways. And that, in an academic sense, people are different types of learners. And that, well, when you were playing, Coach mentioned one thing, you can conceptually get it like this. And the hardest part is that to understand what background they have and what do they come in with. And especially, again, at this level, it's hard because you don't know their experience, who their coaches were, or even if they had coaches that coached every day rather than just throw out a ball. So the hardest part, I think, for myself, coaching-wise, was to begin to communicate in ways that went beyond my understanding of how I learned.
Okay.
In terms of how to get 5, 10 people to come to understand what I want them to do.
How has your strategy changed over time? So your first year of coaching to where you are today, 22 years later.
Yeah.
national championship, 6 regional championships, a national sportsmanship award, 10 regional sportsmanship award. You had to grow over time. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think some of my assistant coaches who've been with me for 18 years and 12 years would say I've gotten softer.
Softer?
Yeah. I've learned to calm down a little bit. I think it comes with age, perhaps the young kids would say, the first year kids would come in and wouldn't say that I'm mellow by any means. They look at me like I'm sometimes out of my mind, that so let's go. But the thing that I've learned to do a little bit, I understand the game better. I understand situations better. I think it's just, whether you're a parent, a teacher, or an executive, by your experience, hopefully you learn, and you learn to size things up a little quicker, and you learn to be a little more preemptive. Not that we still don't make mistakes. By your experience, if you're awake, you begin to learn, and you begin to say, ooh, deja vu, I've been here before, maybe I could do this or that. Even in dealing with individuals on a team, if you've been in so many years, not that nothing's new, but it's pretty the same. So you begin to say, okay, maybe I need to approach it this way or that way.
So you said you're softer. I want to show a clip, and let's see if this really is your softer side. So you grabbed your hair there a little bit, and tell us about that.
I think during the game, I haven't calmed down.
That's fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. As I tell them, if it's game time, you got to be alive, animated, and I just have a passion to see things at a high level. And you know, if you're going to play, play. And if you're going to play, you have to bring, in the sports world, you got to bring some fire, you got to bring some intensity. I don't sit down and watch. I move, I stand up. I express myself. I try to be constructive and positive. But as I said before, basketball is a very emotional, intense game. And sometimes, instead of letting things sit, I may pull my hair, I may walk up and down. On occasion, I may lightly let someone know that they were off, in terms of they could do something a little different. But it comes out of, as I say, a love of the game and a passion. And they know that I love them, and they know that I care about them. But I said, this is about also me correcting you, and during the game I can't go time out and say, well, you should be doing this or that.
So how do you get them fired up? And you talk about that passion, how do you get them to really embrace that?
Some years are easier than others, just like any situation. This year's probably been a little bit more difficult. Primarily, there's 4, 5 young ladies who come from losing programs where they could just go into practice each day and show up. Going to a game, they could show up, and it didn't make a difference. And trying to attempt to get across, the second-year girls are fine because they understand it, and they both came from winning programs, and that losing badly and a lot doesn't teach people a lot of good lessons about how to succeed. And that the hardest part is in practice. I said I shouldn't be the most animated person in practice.
Is there a way, though, or have you had to take a loss, right? An L's an L, a W's a W. But have you been able to have moments where you could take a loss and turn that into some type of victory for the team?
Over the years, yes. I'll give you an example. In 2002, we were undefeated. We went to the Nationals. We lost the first round after being up 13 points with 12 minutes to go. And so the young ladies came back. That's the only game we lost that year. They came back with focus. During the next year, we were 18-0 and went upstate, and we lost to a team. And I didn't have to say anything after the game. They all said to themselves, this is not happening again. And it didn't. And again, it goes back to, I believe, what your experience is, what you want to do. These girls wanted to win.
Sure.
They wanted to climb the mountaintop. And for some people, that's a vision that they don't understand because they've never done it. And it's difficult to get people who've never been close to it to understand what it's about and how you have to each day go after it, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And so that's been probably the most difficult thing this year. But some people have gotten it. As I like to say to some of you on the bus, some of you are still getting your ticket to get on the bus. And that, you can see incremental things, and just like anything, some people learn quicker, faster than others. Sure. Yeah, but you know, you have to learn from losses. If you don't learn from losses, then you're never going to be any good.
So I mentioned before that national, regional championships. I also mentioned the Sportsmanship Award, both at a national, regional level. Does one stand out over the other for you? Are you proud of one over the other?
It may sound silly. One of the things I'm most proud of, I mean, it's always nice to win championships. But in 2002, when we went, we were ranked third in the country. We went to the Nationals. We lost the first game. And it was disappointment. Sure. And then we won the next two. But that's the year we won the National Sportsmanship Award at the tournament. Because our girls went and they cheered and they didn't feel sorry for themselves, but they went out and had a good time. But also, as I like to say, you want to contribute. You're going to come to practice, contribute. You're going to be in the game, contribute. I said, we're going to the Nationals, let's go have some fun. My thing is this, you never cheer for somebody against somebody you're going to play. So we already were in the losers bracket. So when we went to the winners bracket, I said you could cheer for whoever you want. So they cheered and evidently made an impression upon the powers that be there, and we won the Sportsmanship Award at the tournament.
Do you think you talked about teaching folks the fundamentals and those skills. Tell me about sportsmanship. Can you teach that? And if so, how do you go about doing that?
Emphatically. I always like to reiterate each year that I've had a lot of young ladies from some tough neighborhoods that wanted to defend their turf. And my emphasis has always been this: do you want to get even or do you want to win? And if you want to get even, you lose your focus. And that you're here to not go to the lowest level, you're here to go to the highest level.
Sure.
And as long as you play for me, and as long as you play for Suffolk, there's a certain way to conduct yourself. And if you don't conduct yourself in that manner, then you'll be sitting down next to one of my assistants until you learn the lesson.
I'm hearing in a lot of what you said, a lot of teachable moments. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Do you think you teach more on the court or in a classroom?
On the court is more, if you could use the word in athletics, more intimate, because you're with them every day, sweat and tears and toil, ups and downs, family situations, romantic situations. You have to deal with all those things. Classroom's a little more distant, but again, the pleasure that I had for 33 years is walking into a class. As I used to say, the first day of class, I would teach classes. If you're not interested in being healthy, if you're not interested in learning to communicate better, which is another class that and then I was fortunate to teach the sexuality class, that if you're not interested in sex, then there's something wrong with you. So the thing is...
Did people get up and walk out of that class?
No, never.
I didn't think so.
And the thing is that, so it's a little more distant, it's a little bit more conceptual. I mean, you played the people that you sweat, tears, and joy with, you get to know quite well. And as a coach, you attempt to, and my coaching staff, as I said, all played for me, so they understand what we're about and what we're trying to do. And I think the greatest compliment we had from a whole bunch of them is that, I don't like the word, you have a basketball program, it sounds so cold, but we have a pretty large family of young women going back 18, 19 years who still come down during the summer. And we invite you to come down. I hear you still put your sneakers on Wednesday nights. And we have anywhere between 50 and 20 young ladies that come back and play, and big games they'll come back to. And you know, even to this day, they know that we're there for them.
What a testament to you that they come back. I don't doubt that they view that as an extension of their family. Yeah. When I graduated, nobody really taught me or talked to me about, I guess, opportunities I might have to stay within athletics. It just wasn't something that I thought about doing. I didn't know what avenues there were necessarily or how to pursue that. For those that are in your second year program and are getting ready to graduate, what words of wisdom do you give to them, either to continue to pursue their athletics or whatever you think based on your tenure with them, that blood, sweat, and tears you talked about? What words of wisdom do you share with them?
Well, during the year, I always say this because, as I was mentioning with you before, there's less and less women going into coaching at the lower levels. And there's less and less women even going into refereeing, which there's a much more of an opportunity to do that, which gives you a little bit more flexibility in your schedule. I always tell them that, hey, look, I don't think there's anything that's more important than women being a role model for other women and going back to, and to some degree it goes back to what the gentleman said to me. If you played the game, I always tell him this, if you played the game since you were a kid and you loved the game in high school and you love it now, and hopefully we haven't deterred that, I said, go back and help someone else to love it. I said, whether it's in CYO, AAU, but I always say this to them, but teach them. Just don't roll out a ball, because it drives me crazy when I see all that stuff. And teach them fundamentals. My son, who played at St. Anthony's and played at a Division I school at Columbia, and he and I are thinking of writing a book about that at certain levels, 4th and 5th grade, you should learn these skills. By 7th and 8th grade, you should have these skills down fundamental. And if you really look at it in language and math and plenty of other things, there's always that fundamentals that you have to take care of. And again, you played at a level and you know fundamentally you have to be sound. And what happens is kids don't learn the fundamentals, so they don't understand the game, they don't understand situations. And so I try to tell young ladies, go back, just be a high school coach, be a referee. And again, it's not the easiest thing for them to conceptually, because it's a lot of time, a lot of effort, and it's a lot of sacrifice.
Well, I think that book sounds like a great idea. I remember growing up, we didn't have cell phones to play on or video games as much as people do now. I remember throwing ball outside, dribbling up and down my driveway. My nephews are constantly outside playing on their driveway and practicing the basics. So I think that book would probably be pretty key going forward.
Yeah, and actually you hit a sore point: cell phones, video games. Whether it be women or men, there's less and less people who are willing to go out and do that boring thing, going into the front yard or into the driveway and bounce a ball 500 times with your left hand, or go shoot a basket and learn how to use a backboard so it's down, shall we say, routinely. As I said, to be good at anything, you have to be willing to do the boring things and make it fun.
Sure.
I mean, for you it was fun, for me it was fun, but you went out and you just did it because you had a dream or a vision of doing something.
So let's turn to you just for a second. You personally, we've talked a lot about your team and where you've taken the team, but you personally have won National Coach of the Year, 9 Region 15, I guess it's Region 15 Coach of the Year, 6 District Coaches of the Year, and you're named the New York State Junior College Coach of the Year twice. What makes you so special? What do you attribute your recognition to?
I'm going to go back to the classroom.
Okay.
Because I've been very fortunate there to also be acknowledged. I love what I do. I've been fortunate when I taught, I love subject matter. I love being with people. I have the ability, I believe, to relate and to communicate, and as you're in charge of a lot of people, when you're in charge of people, you have to inspire people. I've been blessed and fortunate enough to be able to do that.
So inspiration, communication, teamwork, all important, but bottom line, it's really about the passion and the fire inside.
It's the passion, the fire, and the drive to excel, to be good. I have 3 wonderful children, and they used to leave their house every day, and we used to do a little thing called BEST, be the best that you could be. I tell them, when you come into the gym, be the best that you can be. Just don't show up. It's like going to work and showing up, as opposed to doing your best, not only for yourself, but for your teammates or for wherever you work or whatever you do. And I did the same thing in the classroom. It's a little harder in the classroom. There's a lot of stuff going on. I said, but why be happy with a C? Why don't you see if you could do better?
Well, I've seen you in action, and it's pretty inspiring just from the stands. I can only imagine what the players feel like. So.
Well, sometimes they're happy and sometimes they're not.
It's life, right?
Yes.
So Coach, during a game, at what moment in time do you feel the need to call a timeout, and then what do you say during those timeouts to the team?
Well, I think if we look at this situation here, I remember it exactly as that we were struggling at a certain point in time, and I think that calling timeouts, you have to be cautious because you don't want to do it too often. You want to correct something that you see going wrong, and particularly if you begin to see it multiple times, that it's not being done the right way or the correct way. And I think particularly in this situation, as you can see, I'm a little bit emphatic there, is that what was happening is that on defense there was, and usually it's more defense than offense. Okay. Even though I scored a lot of points, I think I'm known more as a defensive coach, and we've been fortunate enough to lead the country several times in defensive team averages. One or two young ladies, and particularly the young lady that's looking down with the blonde hair, was not getting back on a certain zone that we were playing. So I was trying to emphatically point to her without pointing her out that we need to do certain things.
So a strategic yet teachable moment there.
Yes, another one.
How about in this shot over here? It looks like they're actually in play. Do you think they really hear you when you're talking like that on the court?
From what I understand, yes.
Okay.
They haven't learned to tune me out that much. At this particular point, we were trying to cut off a passing lane, and some young lady went into space. And again, this team that we were playing, I think we were much better than they, and we, instead of being passive, we should have been more aggressive and assertive. And the young lady who was on the top of the key was just, I like to say, lollygagging around instead of reading the situation and taking advantage of it. And so I tried to get her to move to the place where I thought she should be.
Do you find yourself out of your chair walking the sidelines more than sitting in your chair during a game?
Absolutely. I think if I sit in my chair 10% of the time, it's a lot.
Okay.
I'd rather either observe standing than sitting.
Coach, you shared with us some of your proud moments on the court. Do me a favor and share one from your years in the classroom.
I think the class that I enjoyed the most was my health concepts class, because it was about being healthy and making your life work. And I particularly, one facet of class, I had a 10-week self-improvement project where I gave the students, not the option, but everyone had to do one, for 10 points to their final grade. And they could pick any aspect of their life. They could pick exercising more, eating better, giving up cigarettes, and some other things that people would smoke or do, and whatever they wanted to do. And that would be strictly confidential between me and them. They used to have to keep a diary or a journal for 10 weeks. I would help them to set up a program and to also review the journal weekly with them in terms of helping them to improve some aspect of their life. And the real joy of it all was to see people doing things that they didn't think they could do, by giving them the mechanics to help them to be supportive, and also giving them support, because I used to talk every Monday. I used to have a little thing. At the end of the week, you look at your pluses. Mm-hmm. Take one minus, don't focus on it, and then come up with one or two ways you can improve your minuses or your pluses each week. And so we begin to have a little, at the beginning, I call it Monday morning 10 minutes. And what would happen, kids would come in and share their successes or what's going on, or ask for some. So people really begin to see that people were making some improvements. And when you're around people who are doing things and you're attempting to do it, sure, other kids would get on the bus and get more motivated. But there's some really very significant things that people did over those 33 years that really touched me and touched them, that I'm really thankful that I could be a part of their life in that way.
What a neat legacy. You've helped people transform their lives in the classroom and on the court. It's pretty special.
That's what I said. I'm fortunate and blessed.
To kind of conclude our discussion today, is there anything you would want folks to know about you?
I've had a wonderful, use a phrase my father would use a lot, a wonderful run here. When I was in graduate school, I'd never thought of teaching, and for 33 years, subject matter that I really loved. I've been blessed to teach at Suffolk. Again, I've had opportunities to go to four-year schools to teach and to coach, and I always felt there was a calling there, and I loved it. I mean, it fit with my lifestyle and everything else, and living close to where I grew home. But also, as my wife said, I don't think you've ever gone to work, you've gone to play. And I think that's probably the best compliment I could have, because I don't think there was ever a day where I got up and said, I'm going to work. You know, it was always a pleasure to walk into a classroom. It was always a pleasure to walk into a gym. And not to say everything was ha-ha fun all the time, but when I look back at it, I've been very fortunate.